Alright, hello and welcome finally to the secondary weapon reviews. So, there are going to be some changes going forward with the weapon reviews, and to go over those very quickly, basically we're not going to be talking about every single piece of MR fodder in the entire game. However, we will be talking about a couple of them. Instead of talking about every single piece of MR fodder in the game, like, say, the regular Bolto, we're instead going to cut that list down significantly by talking about of note MR fodder, which are weapons that I think I have to talk about, otherwise people will be very angry with me. And then the good category, the great category, and the top 10. This will cut down on the length of these videos significantly, along with the time to edit them, which I think you guys would appreciate, as most people, I think, only really care about the weapons that are worth talking about anyway. So, with that, I hope you enjoy this. If you don't, let me know, as I can go back to the other format if it is in the will of you guys. If you guys really like it when I shit on all of the terrible weapons in the game, then hey, let me know in the comments. But yeah, let's just get started. Alright, first on the list of note MR fodder is the Dex Furus. So the Dex Furus, I think for most players, they're going to get these weapons after they are useful. However, if you are a new player and you get these early, let's say like around MR5 or so, just in that vicinity, these weapons are going to serve you very well. However, I think for a large majority of people, these weapons are not going to be available to you until you have much surpassed the need for them. So while these weapons are fine, I just think that when they're good for you, you're just not really going to have access to them by and large, and they're not really very useful for any endgame business for advanced players. Moving on, we have the regular Furus. So this weapon is actually also of note because it has an augment that can heal you. If you get that augment and slot it on this and just put a bunch of damage mods on it, it's not really going to be very effective at killing anything, but it will be very effective at healing you, and as just a tool that can be useful in some cases. So if you really, really badly need a weapon that can heal you and you for some godforsaken reason don't want to use Life Strike, you can use this. Also of note for new players is the Hiko, or however you're supposed to say this weapon. So the reason this weapon is of note is because concealed explosives exists, which means you can throw this weapon and on very low level enemies, this will explode and kill a bunch of dudes. That is very, very useful for a number of the early starting planets, so because of the incredibly low master rank of this weapon, if you get concealed explosives, this weapon will be very good early on. However, this strategy falls off pretty significantly later on. Alright, getting close to the end of the of note MR fodder list is the Twin Roga. So the Twin Roga actually has no redeeming features. This weapon is just here so I can shit on it because I think people are going to tell me I'm wrong. This is compared a lot to the Tigris Prime. This is not even fucking close to the Tigris Prime. I know the stats, if you just compare them on paper with one another, you'd be like, oh, well, this is a status shotgun that has 2 rounds in the magazine. And yeah, that should be really good, right? You just shoot this and it dies. It's just like the Tigris Prime. Wrong. This weapon is not slash damage based. The Tigris Prime is as good as it is because it has so much slash damage in the majority. This weapon's lowest IPS value is slash damage, and that makes it pretty much completely fucking worthless when you're actually going to be able to acquire these things. Take that with also a reload that is far too long, and you get the Twin Roga. It's garbage. And finally, the last of note MR fodder is the weapon people are probably going to be the angriest about because it is so goddamn pretty, and it's the Vasto Prime. So this weapon is vaulted, MR10, and just not really worth using. Even if you sink the 4-form of this thing once into it, you can shoot a guy with it, it'll get the job done, but it's just not. It's pretty. Like, that's all this weapon is. Like, realistically speaking, it's just a pretty weapon, and as much as I would like this weapon to be better, or, for example, maybe have the Pandeiro's gimmick, it just doesn't have that. So, that is our final of note MR fodder. Moving on to good weapons. Alright, first on the list of good weapons is a weapon that I fucking hate, and that's the AK Bolto Prime. I can't stand these weapons because it feels like I'm getting carpal tunnel every time I use them. However, they do perform pretty well. I think the master rank is actually high for these weapons, as they have a number of restrictions that I think hold them back, mainly them being travel time and just not being full auto. But yeah, they're fine. Like, they're serviceable. They don't need a lot of forma to get going because they come with really good polarities to start. And there are redeeming features to these things, so if you really need a Bolto variant, this is definitely the one that you're going to want to be using. Moving on, we have the Ak Bronco Prime. So these do respectable damage. They do very respectable damage, and they're 100% status, like strippers that can just like annihilate armor, apply whatever status you could possibly need to enemies very, very efficiently. And there are a number of cases where these weapons will be useful to you. However, their range is pretty short, and the spread on these weapons is not great. So you're not really going to be able to fire this down even a long hallway and still really get a lot done at higher levels. But they are very useful as a tool and definitely serviceable. The Aklex Prime. So, oh, how the mighty have fallen. This weapon is Mastery Rank 15. That is, like, for how hard this weapon is to acquire. It comes from relics from Borrow. And how much forma this weapon wants. And it wants 6 or 7. Master Rank 15, it's just too much. This weapon does a lot of damage. It does. But its reload is really fucking long, and its status just isn't where it needs to be for, let's call it, the current metagame of Warframe. So while these weapons, I think, are a lot of fun, they can be a really good time, they're just not actually very useful. Moving on, we have the Dual Toxicist. So it might actually be surprising to a number of people that these are on the good list, and they are kind of barely making it. So the improvements to the passive of these weapons is really the thing that's making it as good as it is. You can put a lot of fire rate on this weapon and just really go ham with it, because you can stack the buff and keep it going for a pretty long period of time now. So unlimited ammo, rapid fire, headshots, it's pretty good. These are very serviceable, but they do kind of come with a caveat that you really have to get used to these weapons, and if you can't land headshots, they're going to be dog shit. Alright, the Euphona Prime, probably one of the most overrated weapons in the entire game. This weapon is fine. It's serviceable. Its slug format does really good damage. Its reload is long and its magazine size is small. And also it is a projectile weapon that has a lot of drop. Like, it probably has maybe the most aggressive drop in the entire game of any weapon, which is kind of crazy. And it's serviceable in its slug format. You could use it that way, mostly because this gun is very pretty. However, the way I think most people would want to use this weapon is in its buckshot format. Its buckshot format is basically a sidearm Tigris Prime. However, it is a Tigris Prime with significantly less range that doesn't really have room to put a punch-through mod in. And with that, it basically makes it just not very useful, because even at the mid-range, which let's call mid-range 7 meters away, it's really just not going to do enough. You really have to be up in your enemy's face, and at those kinds of ranges, just bring a melee weapon, because that's just going to serve you way better. The Hystrix, surprisingly, making it into good. This weapon is just placed really well. Its unique effect is actually useful. It's only MR7, and it's incredibly easy to build. It has a lot going for it in a very strange way, and it just gets the job done. So if you need a unique weapon, definitely pick this up. It's actually probably better than Korra is. Alright, the single Lex Prime. So, the Aklex Prime is holding 2 of these. The single is holding 1 of these. And as it turns out, holding 1 of these is, you know, a lot less reload time and half the magazine size. And that's still pretty good. And it's really easy to acquire this weapon as it's at a reasonable mastery rank. So it's so easy to get, you might as well pick one up because it's useful in a number of situations. So yeah, go for it. The Mereloc. So the regular Mereloc is actually the weapon I debated most even putting into good, as it is so close, so close to being MR Fodder. However, I think the regular Mereloc is just barely good enough where I think people should pick it up. It's a really solid weapon. It's a little bit hard to build, a little tiny tad hard to build, especially if you're trying to build a clan all on your own. But it really does get the job done, and it doesn't really need any forma to just do what it does. Like, there's very, very low investment on this weapon, so newer players should absolutely pick this up. Alright, the new core. Yes, I am just as surprised as you are to see this on this list, but it's only Mastery Rank 4. It's Mastery Rank 4. This is super solid for new players, and also the meme build for this weapon, where you use Harrow to give it 100 and some % crit chance, is actually really viable and does a fuckload of damage. And this weapon has good status. There's just a number of factors making this weapon actually worthwhile to pick up as an early game player, and just leave it sitting around in your inventory until you're ready to do meme bullshit with it. So it ends up being good. The Pox. So the Pox are a tool. You build these for whatever element you need to proc on your enemies, and you just throw it into a crowd, and the gas infects everyone. You need to strip a ton of armor. Are you Nidus? Like, hey, just hit 2, throw one of these in, enemies don't have armor, murder them with Nidus. Like, there's a lot of Warframes that really love armor stripping and applying other effects, and the Pox is amazing at doing just that. Combine that with, at low levels, this actually being incredibly good clear, and this weapon is definitely good and serviceable, and you're going to want to keep it around as a tool to use in situations where it is necessary. Piranha Prime. So Piranha Prime is the newest Prime Secondary addition to the game, and it's good. It's good, it's fine, it's serviceable, and if its effect goes off, it's probably in the great category. However, at the higher levels where you need that effect, it's probably not going to go off, and that is what pushes this down into good instead of landing in great. The effect is just not consistent enough. So it's just not quite there. Honestly, if this was 2 kills in rapid succession, this would probably be in the great category, but 3 is just barely too much for this weapon to regularly achieve against higher level enemies. So it lands in good. The Racta Ballistica. So the Racta Ballistica barely makes it into the good category because it provides energy to your Warframe. That is extremely useful, and the master rank on this weapon is only 6, making it a very, very good tool if you need that. Turns out, a lot of Warframes are a big fan of having more energy and more energy regeneration, and just as a base level, this weapon is very serviceable. So it's actually more useful than its prime counterpart. The Sonicore. So this weapon is not as good as it used to be, but it is still handheld crowd control that comes in at only Master Rank 2, and it has enough damage to still get the job done against a wide swath of enemies. So if you're looking to have a good time, you can definitely pick this up very, very early on and get that good time going. And finally, rounding out the good category, we have the Zocti. So the Zocti, much like the Pox, is also a tool weapon. There are a variety of combinations with this weapon that make it incredibly potent, including using it with dual wielding with glaives, using this as an application for any corrosive projection type shenanigans, which I guess is the thing you do with glaives as well, opening enemies to finishers, and just in general being pretty solid AoE. This weapon is just good at a lot of different things, so you're probably going to want to have one in your arsenal for when you need it. Alright, starting and ending the great category, we have the Arca Cisco. So I'm going to be brutally honest, the only reason the Arca Cisco is in the great category is because I don't have a number 11 spot on my top 10 list, and this is the only weapon that falls into great besides the top 10 list, so here we are. This weapon has incredibly fast repeat fire, it has really good status application, the gimmick is strong, and its damage is very high after you have its gimmick rolling, which is really easy to accomplish. So it's just super strong. I feel like a lot of people tend to forget about this weapon, but it's really very good. So anyway, moving on from the one great category into our top 10 proper, starting with number 10, the Twin Gricadas. So I'm actually not 100% certain I need to explain why these weapons are good. You fire a lot of bullets downrange, and whatever you happen to be shooting at, fucking evaporates. That's what the Twin Gricadas do, that's what they've always done, and even with 11% status, you shoot so many fucking bullets that just happens to be good enough to also apply tons of status and strip armor. Who would have thought, if you shoot fucking 400 bullets downrange, you're gonna apply some statuses, like quite a few actually. So yeah, they do a lot of damage. The one problem that these weapons have is that they use a lot of ammo. You're going to have to, at the absolute minimum, bring carrier if you're going to be using these weapons. But they get the fucking job done at the very least. Maybe a surprise to see on the top 10, but coming in at number 9, we have the Knell. So the Knell, the thing about the Knell is it's dependent on its gimmick. Unlike the Arca Cisco, where the Arca Cisco, its gimmick is a bonus, the Knell requires its gimmick to be good. But if you can headshot enemies every, like, 6 seconds or so, which is not difficult, this weapon has unlimited ammo and really, really good damage, as its critical multiplier is boosted by it getting headshots as well, and all that business. It does a lot. You can kill things incredibly quickly as long as you can get a headshot sometimes. Like, you want the first shot to be a headshot, and then everything else is gravy. You killed the whole room. Everyone in the room is dead now. It's a really, really solid weapon that I know is a unique taste, but if you can get used to that unique taste, it's incredibly powerful. The Axe Stiletto Prime. So Axe Stiletto Prime has fallen from grace quite a ways, mostly because other weapons are just doing what it does better. However, it comes in at number 8 because what it does is still incredibly useful. These apply status and they kill enemies, and their reload is basically instantaneous. They have a lot of really good points, but there's just other weapons that are doing what these do and did better than it used to be the case, basically. So definitely get these if you can, but there are a couple of better options. The Vacor Mereloc. So I debated quite a bit putting this above the Axe Stiletto Prime. This and the Axe Stiletto Prime are definitely the 2 weapons on this list I think I could most easily switch and feel good about, but the Vacor Mereloc, I think, takes it just because this weapon heals you, and this weapon has such a variety of builds on it that are very good. Do you want to build this for crit? You can do that. Do you want to build this for status? You can do that. And it's always going to heal you, and it's always going to be useful. So the versatility of this weapon is just what brings it above the Axe Stiletto Prime at current, I think. The Maratron. So this weapon is absolutely incredible now. The regular Detron, dog shit. But when you change it to the Mara, with the very specific change that the spread on this weapon is perfect for shooting it down a hallway and killing everyone in it, it's really good. The Maratron is very, very strong. It's a 100% status elemental. Like, you can go corrosive radiation blast on this weapon, shoot it down a hallway. They don't have armor. They're confused. They're knocked down. They're dead. Like, there's so much to like about this weapon, and you couple that with its incredible reload and good magazine size, and it's just super strong and fantastic. Also, for you mag players out there, this is definitely what you want to pick up. You want to pick up this weapon specifically. The Staticore. So the Staticore, I think, is just vastly underrated. This weapon still boasts, well, it's purely elemental, just like the Maratron, which we just went over. So you can build this Radiation Corrosive Blast, which is really good. It's AoE, it applies status very well, and it does really good damage. There's a lot of really solid things going on with this weapon. There's no real downsides to using it other than it's worse than the number 1 weapon on my list. I guess that's the main downside, really. The Pandeiro. So, for those of you that were unhappy that I shat on the Vasto Prime, just use this instead. It comes in at 2 mastery rank lower and is better in just every goddamn way that exists. This has Fan the Hammer, so those of you that play McCree in Overwatch, this is the gun you're looking for. It's incredible. It's really good. This weapon is good because of its Fan the Hammer ability. It just does a ton of damage in quick succession. Its reload is near instant. There's there's just a bounty of benefits to this thing. It has really good just even single shot damage for like hitting guys at range. The list could go on. Like, there's just a lot to it that's just like all these moving parts that come together just to be great. But it's mostly that the burst fire is just incredible. The Sicarus Prime. So if you had asked me maybe 4 months ago what the best secondary weapon in the entire game was, I probably would have told you the Sicarus Prime. But it comes in at number 3 because some other changes with the game happened, and there's a few things that are a lot better than it. However, the Sicarus Prime still comes in at number 3, and it's still incredibly good. It does high damage. The burst fire is really useful, especially against nullifiers. It has very good status for applying any status you need to, stripping armor, what have you. There's a lot of advantages to this weapon, and while I think the mastery rank is a little high, and it's definitely hard to acquire this weapon, it just does so much, and I've used it in so many situations and been so happy with it, that it gets here via the virtue of just being so versatile and useful in so many situations. So yeah, that's the Sicarus Prime. The Sinoid Gamma Core. Coming in at number 2, it is probably no surprise for those of you that have been keeping up with my streams that this weapon is very highly rated on my list. It's only Master Rank 7, it gives you energy, you can build Corrosive Magnetic to make it so that it is anti-scaling against every single enemy in the game that is not a sentient. It does very high damage, it has perfect accuracy, its reload is quite fast, it has a good magazine size, and its energy, or its ammo efficiency is very good. The list could probably go on a little bit. The Sinoid Gamma Core is absolutely fucking incredible, and the beam rework, it was very good. The beam rework was very kind to the most of the beams in the game. So moving on to number 1, it should come with very little surprise that it's the Atomos. The beam rework made some really, really good weapons. This weapon is only Master Rank 5, and I would advise you to pick this weapon up the absolute moment it's available. This weapon has one of the best progression ramps of any weapon that I've seen in the game to date. You can put no form in this, and it functions and it murders groups of enemies in an AoE, and it applies status. 1 forma, better. Like 3 forma, much better. And then you can go all the way up to its 6 forma that it wants, and it's even better. It's the ramp up for this weapon is absolutely incredible. It is AoE, it applies status, it's purely elemental. It's critical. It just shreds. It shreds anything. You just fire it into a crowd, and then the crowd is both on fire, has no armor, on the ground, dying. Just everything goes wrong for an enemy that you shoot the Atomos at. Nothing goes right. Like if you like a Grineer is walking around and he's having a great day. The moment the Atomos comes within his field of vision, his day is bad. Day instantly bad. The Atomos is ridiculously good. It is so powerful, and I think currently kind of underrated. So if you're a new player, an old player, a veteran, I don't care what you're doing, get an Atomos. It's fucking incredible. And that is gonna do it for the secondary review. I hope you guys enjoyed this new style. If you didn't, please, again, let me know. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow.